Lemuel Gulliver, a middle-aged man, wakes up in his messy New York apartment and goes about his morning routine. He talks to his superhero toys on a shelf and dances in the shower, showing us his silly side. Gulliver works at a New York newspaper company in the mail room. On that day, he meets a new worker named Dan and starts to get along with him. Dan's boss in the mail service is Gulliver. As they deliver their mail for the day, they run into Gulliver's longtime crush and a writer named Darcy Silverman. He has loved her for a long time but has never told her. Later that day, Dan puts up a sign that says he has been promoted to head of the mail department on his first day. Gulliver has worked at the building for 10 years, but no one there respects him. Dan says that Gulliver is afraid to talk and will never get anywhere in life besides his mailroom job because he is afraid to talk. Gulliver is upset as he leaves the office and sees Darcy working late. He gets up the nerve to ask her out and goes to her home. But his fears get the best of him, so he takes a random piece of paper from her desk and leaves. Darcy asks him if he would like to try out for a job writing about travel. A scared Gulliver accepts, and the next day he has to turn in a trip blog. At home, he copies and pastes a few stories from the internet for the blog. The next day at work, he gives it to Darcy. Darcy is pleased with his writing skills and gives him a new assignment. She wants him to go to the Bermuda Triangle and write a piece about the stories of ships going missing there. Gulliver agrees so that he can impress her. Darcy sets him up with a friend and a boat. The next day, Gulliver flies to Bermuda, where a man picks him up. He takes Gulliver to a boat he rented and shows him how to use it. The trip is pretty easy because the boat is run by computers. Gulliver finally takes the boat alone to the Bermuda Triangle. During the first few hours, he has fun by reading magazines about how to build a robot and drinking several cans of Coke. He soon falls asleep. After a while, he wakes up and sees a huge wave coming toward him. A storm comes up at sea, so he quickly puts on a life jacket. The water makes the boat shake a lot. When Gulliver turns around, he sees a huge sea storm heading toward him. Gulliver's boat is pulled on top of the storm and then right into its eyes. The screen turns dark. Gulliver can't move his body when he opens his eyes. When he looks down, he is surprised to see some small guys standing on his chest. Their boss says that he is the captain of the Lilliput and gives his name as Edward Edwardian. Gulliver. Small ropes and pieces of wood are holding him to the ground. Gulliver is called a beast by Commander Edward. Gulliver, who doesn't know what's going on, screams in fear and easily gets out of the ropes. He tries to close his eyes because he thinks this is all a dream. Edward tells his troops to take care of the beast. The soldiers hook Gulliver's pants with their hooks and knock him out. When Gulliver wakes up, he is tied to a cart that is pulling him into the land of Lilliput. The little people come out of their homes to see the beast. He is taken to the royal castle and given to King Theodore, the ruler of Lilliput. Princess Mary, who is the king's daughter, feels sorry for Gulliver and asks Edward if he needs to be held back. Edward says that Gulliver is a spy from Blefusher, a country that is at war with them. Gulliver says something at last and asks the king where he is. Jinx, who works for King Theodore, tells him that he is in Lilliput, which is the best country in the world. Gulliver thinks this is a joke, so he tells the cameraman who doesn't exist to show himself. In the next part of the story, Gulliver is locked up in a cave. He meets a man named Horatio who is also in prison. Edward put Horatio in jail for life because he tried to court Princess Mary. Edward comes up to them again and listens to what they have to say. He calls him a lame ass. When Edward gets mad and says he will lock them up for life, Gulliver says that lame ass means brave. Edward is happy with the answer, so he takes Gulliver and the other prisoner to a field to help him plow it. He puts a machine on Gulliver to hold him back. Just then, there are 2 bell rings coming from the house, which means Blefusher has attacked. They have set fire to the castle and are trying to take Princess Mary away. Edward runs quickly to the house and tells everyone not to save the princess because he wants to save her himself. Edward can't get to her in time, so Horatio asks Gulliver to do it. Gulliver easily beats the Blefushan troops and saves the girl. The king and his servant, on the other hand, are stuck in the fire. Gulliver pees on the building because he is in a hurry. When he puts out the fire and saves King Theodore, everyone cheers for him. He and Horatio are freed by the king, who thanks Gulliver for being brave. He also asks everyone to a feast that will be held at night to mark the event. Edward can't stand it when someone else gets credit for being brave. The king asks Gulliver where he is from at the feast, and Gulliver says that he is from Manhattan. People in Manhattan think that Gulliver is the president because he is the toughest person there. Gulliver feels like a hero for the first time in his life, so he makes up the story that he was called President the Awesome. Edward is the only one who doesn't believe him. The next day, the people of Lilliput built Gulliver a huge house with all the things he couldn't get in New York. Gulliver asks the king to send a search party to look for his sunk boat. Gulliver also makes them build a theater big enough for the whole land to fit in. Then he shows them a play about the Titanic sinking and says it's about his life. Everyone can't believe how bad his life has been. Edward asks Gulliver how he was saved after he drowned, and Gulliver says he was brought back to life. Later, Horatio asks Gulliver to help him win over Princess Mary, and Gulliver agrees. They go to the house, where Horatio talks to the princess. Gulliver, who is hiding, says the words to the song, Kiss, which Horatio has to repeat. By the end, the princess is beginning to like Horatio. But Edward calls her and comes to court her. Since Edward is the strongest person in the country, it was always meant for them to get married. Edward is not someone Princess Mary likes, but she can't seem to get rid of him. The search team finds the boat with the cans of Coke somewhere else. When Gulliver gets there, his phone is still working. There are 12 voicemails from Darcy. It turns out that she is very angry about Gulliver's stolen piece. She must now sail on the same path Gulliver did to find out more about the Bermuda Triangle. Gulliver doesn't want to face her again in New York, so he chooses to stay in Lilliput for good. Edward doesn't like the choice, and he tells the king that he thinks Gulliver is up to no good. The king tells him to leave, saying that he has faith in Gulliver. Because he stayed, the king makes Gulliver the new general and puts Edward in the position of vice-general. Edward is jealous, so he turns off Lilliput's defense system, which makes it easy for Blefusher to attack. When the troops and king of Blefusher see this, they plan to attack Lilliput right away. They go through the water to get to the kingdom and fire cannonballs at Lilliput. Since Gulliver is the general, it is now his job to stop them. He steps into the water nervously and starts splashing it around. Gulliver is much bigger than the cannonballs, so they don't hurt him. In the end, he beats the Blefushians and becomes Lilliput's hero. All of Gulliver's dreams come true because of the people of Lilliput. So he would feel at home. They even made a model of Times Square. They change what they wear to look like Gulliver. Soldiers are put in charge of cutting his hair and massaging him. One night, Edward walks into the princess's room without knocking. He says he can come in whenever he wants because he likes the princess. The princess finally tells him that she doesn't love him and doesn't want him to court her anymore. Edward, who is angry, goes to Blefusher to ask their king for aid. Gulliver had a book on the boat called Build Your Robot. The king of Blefusher agrees to help him use the book to build a robot to fight Gulliver. A few days later, Gulliver is at Model Times Square when the palace bells start to ring, which is a sign of an attack. Gulliver gets ready to fight tiny people, but he is shocked when Edward stands in front of him with a huge robot. Edward asks him to fight in a duel. Gulliver doesn't have any choice but to agree. He tries to push the robot, but it is much bigger than him. It grabs Gulliver by the pants and forces him to admit that he lost. Gulliver also admits that everything he said about being president was a lie. The king and princess are shocked that he turned against them. As a punishment, Edward sends Gulliver to the island where we dare not go. This is a place where no one is allowed to go. When Gulliver is left there, a big little girl picks him up. It turns out that giants live on the island. The girl thinks Gulliver is a toy, so she keeps him in her Barbie house and dresses him in pink clothes. In the meantime, Darcy's body washes up on the shore in Lilliput. Gulliver told everyone that Darcy is his home country's princess, so Edward knows who she is and puts her in jail. King Theodore and his queen are in jail after Gulliver's loss. Horatio sees this and plans to get Gulliver back by going to the island where we dare not go. He is tiny on the island, but he makes it to Gulliver without getting hurt. A dead US Air Force pilot skeleton is also in the little girl's model. Gulliver gets away with the help of the parachute and flies back to Lilliput. He first goes to the jail to meet Darcy and tells her that he likes her. She doesn't mind that he stole the article and seems to be getting closer to him. Gulliver has chosen to have a fight with Edward. He's no longer trying to show how brave he is, but he still wants to help Lilliput. The next day, they face each other and are ready to fight. If Edward wins, Gulliver wants him to give the land back to King Theodore. But if he doesn't win, Edward will destroy the whole country. When they fight, Edward beats him in a matter of seconds. Horatio runs over to help him and gets into the robot. He beats Edward from inside the robot, which finally stops working. After that, Gulliver easily beats it, and everyone cheers. Even Darcy is happy about the win. Horatio is given permission to court Princess Mary because he is brave. At last, they kiss. But right at that moment, Edward, who has gone completely crazy, takes the princess hostage. The princess, who has had enough of Edward, beats him up in anger. The first kiss between Darcy and Gulliver comes next. Gulliver stops the Blefuscan king and Theodore from starting the fight again. He makes peace between the warring island nations by reading Edwin Starr's poem, War, and he and Darcy finally sail back to New York City on their fixed ship. A few weeks later, Gulliver quit his job in the mailroom and is now working as a trip writer. He's happy with Darcy, and she's happy with him. Gulliver has just returned from a trip, and the movie ends as he and Darcy walk out of his office holding hands. Share your thoughts in the comments, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next videos.